Welcome back to the HR Social Hour Half Hour podcast. This is Wendy without John, and we are continuing our very special series of HR Wonder Women, where my good friend Ann Tompkinson is joining me so we can highlight some very awesome women of color that you need to know. So we hope that you enjoy this series. Ann, welcome tonight. How are you doing?
I am doing well, Wendy. Thank you very much. How are you?
I am doing well. It is a Sunday evening, and I think it's the last of summer from what I've heard, but had a lot of fun with the Girl Scouts today, ready to kick off fall with them.
I am not ready to say goodbye to summer, I have to admit, but I guess I don't really have any say in that.
No, it kind of happens whether we like it or not. Well, we have a great show for y'all tonight, and so we'll jump in and get started. Ann, why don't you introduce our guest?
Thank you very much. I will. I am very excited to have Sarah Morgan on the show. I have been following Sarah on social media for a while and admire her and look up to her. And I don't even have words for how excited I am about this episode. So let me introduce her. Sarah Morgan is a human resources executive with nearly 20 years experience as an active practitioner across several industries. In 2011, Sarah began her blog, The Buzz on HR, under the name Buzz Rooney, which was a spin on her childhood nickname. In 2013, she retired the pen name and began blogging and speaking under her own name. Sarah has been named to HR Blogger Network's Top 40 Under 40, the Recruit Daily Top 300 Women in HR Technology, and the Expert HR UK list of top global HR voices. The Buzz on HR has been named to the Proven Best HR Blogs, the Bamboo HR Top HR Blogs, the Wanolo Top 25 HR Practitioners Blogs, and the PayScale Top 25 Must-Read HR blogs for consecutive years. Sarah is also a wife and mother living outside Raleigh, North Carolina. When not writing, speaking, or practicing HR, she enjoys speaking out against depression, binge watching TV, and taking cardio dance classes. And I am exhausted just reading all of that. So Sarah, I'm going to jump right into the questions. One of the reasons that we really wanted to do this podcast is to amplify the voices of women of color in HR. We know that the experiences of women of color are different than that of white women. There are some commonalities, but too often feminist issues are defined by white feminists. What are the unique challenges that women of color face in the workplace?
Whew. Well, we're just going to jump right into it.
That's what we do here.
I know. Thank you, first of all, for having me. I think that what's different for women of color, and I speak as a Black woman myself, is really navigating that dual burden of being both a woman and a person of color at the same time. In the workplace, you're dealing with double the microaggressions. And a lot of times you don't even know which one is at play in the moment. Is this happening to me because I'm a person of color? Is this happening to me because I'm a woman? Sometimes it can be both. And sometimes it can be so nuanced that you're just not sure, which one is the thing that is causing the burden when there's no other obvious explanation, as to why. I think as Black women, we find our credibility and our authority being questioned more often when we're in the workplace, and we find that we're excluded from kind of the informal networks, which leads to mentoring, which is super strange because studies are showing that among the populations in America, Black women are the most highly educated. We have more advanced degrees than our other female counterparts, but yet we're still only about 8% of the people at management and executive levels. We're about 3% of the C-suite. And when you look at board seats among the Fortune 1000, we're right at 1%. And it's like, how is that possible? Forbes magazine, in an article I was reading, said that we are the least likely group to be promoted. And how do you mesh that with us being the most educated group? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I think that's why you're starting to see more and more Black women taking the route of entrepreneurs. We are the largest growing entrepreneur population in America right now. And I think it really just speaks to the fact that we are tired of being marginalized and we're just going to focus on making our own way rather than continuing to play this game with a deck that's stacked against us that we can't win. When you look at that in the face of the workplace, it forces Black women and I think to some extent all women of color, to start to look at things differently and start to figure out how I can create a different path for myself rather than continuing to deal with spaces that don't want to make a place to include me.
I think you're right on the money with a lot of that. And so this kind of goes into the next question too. Our last guest described challenges for women as roadblocks, which is much more significant than just challenges. Yeah, sometimes I feel like we're trying to minimize what the challenge is too, and we don't make it as big as it is. So let's talk a little bit about how HR can help break down some of those barriers that you've just described.
I loved what Margaret talked about when she said, that these are real legitimate barriers. I think the term that I've also seen used is a concrete ceiling, for women of color, whereas white women are facing a glass ceiling, and that's daunting. But I think that as HR practitioners and professionals, we have got to become more educated about how bias plays a part in our workplaces, and we have to create programming to address it. There are still so many harassment and discrimination trainings that don't address bias head on, that don't talk about microaggression and the impact, and HR is failing as it relates to that because we're still scared to address these topics head on. And I think a large part of the reason why we're scared is because we just don't understand it ourselves. We struggle to understand privilege and fragility. We won't even admit it exists in some circles. And if we don't understand that, then how are we going to properly advocate for diversity and inclusion and equity? If we don't understand that, we don't know where those things intersect. We don't know where they're different. If we don't understand how microaggressions and dog whistles play out in our workplaces, we can't be effective in eradicating it. And so that, I think, is where it starts, is really with us taking the time to educate ourselves about these topics. This is so huge, for us right now in the world. It's not even just in the country. And there's so many resources at our fingertips that if we're committed to doing this work and doing it right, we can learn more about it and do better. And then the other thing I would say for HR is that we have to get more active in the succession planning space, because I think a lot of times we leave the work of succession planning to the leaders of the respective departments. Like if accounting is trying to figure out who's going to be the next CFO or who's going to be the next senior director of finance or stuff like that, we let them figure that out themselves. And so we don't take those opportunities to say, let's look at some different people. Let's look at, some other folks. Is this an opportunity for us to add a new perspective, to add some diversity into that group? We let ourselves kind of fall to the sidelines, and then we have no opportunity to partner up with them and start pointing managers in a better direction. Another thing I think that works is really slipping in diversity and representation in non-threatening ways. I know a lot of people don't like that because there's this idea that diversity has to be in your face, but it doesn't all the time. We, at my job this year, we have 7 offices spread throughout the United States, up and down the East Coast, and then out into the West Coast. And we have what we call a digital bulletin board that runs the same announcements and things so that employees in every office are seeing the same thing and having the same experience. And we infuse inspirational quotes and historical facts about our industry. We're in security, and every quote that we've selected this year has been by a woman or a person of color. Every did you know fact about the history of our industry has been about a woman or a person of color, because it's just infusing that representation in there to let people know that there are other voices, marginalized voices that you don't normally hear, that you can. Then we do trivia contests. So we'll say, what was the fast fact for this? And that forces people to kind of keep in their mind that this Black woman was the first person to create and get the patent for closed circuit television. I'm not sure anybody else would have known that, if we hadn't done that. So it's taking those kinds of opportunities to infuse some representation in ways, not just during Black History Month or Women's History Month, but infusing it at other times of the year and just working it into to regular events and things that you have going on. I know later on this month we're doing a cultural acknowledgement, and we just try to make sure that we celebrate the diversity that we have within our group. And I think that HR can do that more often as well.
I think that's great. I think that intentionality, because if so much of the history that we are told kind of in the mainstream that we learned growing up in school that's just sort of out there just ignores women and ignores people of color. And
yeah, it does.
And so if we're not intentional, then we never bring people back into the center where they need to be. And so it's really not like, oh, a numbers game, or, oh, you're being artificial. You're just being intentional. I think that's fantastic. I mentioned in the bio that you write a blog, The Buzz on HR, which is a fantastic blog. And you have also, you started, I guess, a couple years ago now, the Black Blogs Matter. And
yes.
You have spoken earlier this year on the No Ego podcast with Smin and on the Impact Makers podcast with Jennifer McClure about the history of that and how it came about and what you were trying to do with that. So I think if people want to know the backstory about that, they ought to listen to those two podcasts because they're really good. But we want you to talk now about what's next. What do you see for Black Blogs Matter? Where do you see it going? Tell us what's next in all of that stuff for you.
You know, I never cease to be amazed at how well the challenge was received and how much people have started to look forward to what's next and what's going on with it, because that wasn't at all like what I expected. So it continues to like surprise me and just inspire me to keep going. But the challenge will be back in 2019 with a new lineup of topics. This year I got a little over ambitious and I had two segments of the challenge going on at one time. One was a daily challenge that featured Black bloggers in different spaces, everything from lifestyle to fashion to finance. And that was really fun because I exposed myself to people that I would not have found, otherwise, just because it wasn't in my normal purview. And now I had to go and look for it. And so it was new people to follow and new people to connect and partner with. So that was really great. And then I extended the normal challenge, the writing piece of it, from being a 28-day challenge to being a weekly topic for 16 weeks, which was a lot. Like I was like, oh, this is more, like I didn't anticipate that. So I'm still trying to figure out what the right balance is, because I don't want to just write for Black History Month and then drop it. But it carried into May. And that was a long time creatively, because a lot of the stuff that you're writing about is heavy topics, man. And you do that work and it gets laborious after a while because it's heavy stuff to talk about. So I've got to figure out what the proper balance is, but it will definitely be back. I am also launching the Black Pods Matter podcast.
Awesome.
I hosted a podcast back in 2016, 2017 with Performance I Create, and I really loved it. For a number of reasons, I had to walk away from that, and now I've taken some time. And I'm like, no, I think I want to get back into podcasting again. So right now I'm in a podcast cohort, and I'm developing the idea and just really trying to get myself together so I can make sure that the content is focused and so I can be as successful as possible. And just really wanting to feature Black voices talking about what's going on in the world, to give everyone an opportunity to hear about everyday topics, from the voices of people that they wouldn't necessarily encounter, in their space of the world. And then also to bring issues to light that, again, people wouldn't hear in every aspect. So I'm excited about that. It's daunting though, but if your dreams don't scare you a little bit, you're doing it wrong. So I figure I'll jump on out there and see where it goes. So I'm in the core cohort until November, and then I'll be working on launching by the first of the year. So I'm very excited about that. I'm doing speaking. I'll be at the Q Employee Relations Conference next week. Their opening keynote talking about diversity and inclusion in employee relations. And then I'll be speaking at the Bamboo HR Web Summit in November on handling workplace investigations. I've got a white paper coming out with Ultimate Software about the future of artificial intelligence in HR. And then I'm still writing for my own blog. I've kind of dropped down to about one post a month. Sometimes I'm able to squeeze out two, but with my calendar looking like it is right now, and then having a full-time job and a family, there's just not enough time. So, I'm just keeping busy making my way, finding my space, and just following the path, which is, it's exciting. It's definitely exciting.
Definitely is. I loved following the Black Blogs Matter hashtag last year and just seeing what was out there and finding new people to follow. That was the other great thing, is getting those voices out in front of myself, which is really awesome, because Sarah, you've been great on social media sharing examples of white allies who get it right. And that's really what, for Anne and I, trying to get it right. How can we be allies in this fight, I guess, for lack of a better term? I don't like that it's a fight, but
yeah,
here we are.
Yeah, first I say I really appreciate you acknowledging that. I share stuff a lot of times on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and I don't know that I necessarily start out with the highest intent. It really is. No, it's the petty side of me that's like, this stuff is not that hard. Like, look at this company or look at this person who is doing diversity and inclusion in a really intentional way and not making it difficult. They're not having difficulty finding the people and figuring out how to incorporate them, because I think sometimes we make it seem like it's so hard, and it's not when you're intentional about it. I share stuff, and sometimes I don't always think that I'm sharing it, trying to highlight those things, but I'm glad that it's being received that way. And it was a call, like hearing you guys say that is a call to me to keep doing it and to do it more. But I think in terms of being an ally, it really is about committing to educate yourself about these issues and learning to listen more than you talk. This work isn't really about you. It's about centering and creating space for other people. So you got to pass the mic. You got to let other people have the opportunity to talk, tell their story, share their experience in their voice, and not do anything to interrupt and dilute and discount, what it is that those folks are saying. And then I think the other piece is knowing that you're going to get it wrong. And that's okay. Like, you're going to say stuff, it's going to offend someone, you're going to have to be corrected. That is all okay, but what's not okay is inserting yourself into the space to share your opinion without having done any type of educational effort, no requisite knowledge whatsoever, and then being unwilling to be checked when someone says, yo, you're doing this wrong. The way that you're coming at this is not the right way, and you're inserting your privilege into this moment more than anything else. And then taking accountability for that and just being willing to say, I'm sorry, show me how, to do it better. Give me resources to teach me how to do it better, and then following through on that. So, that for me is what's really important for anyone who's looking to be an ally, and I'll even say an accomplice in this fight. If you're trying to get in here and do this work alongside us, then that's what's really important. As with Black Blogs Matter, I found so many people who wrote stuff, but then didn't really read and reshare other people's stuff. And it's this wasn't for white people. And I don't say that to be divisive or offensive, but this is not about you. This is about centering voices that don't typically have the opportunity to be, heard on a larger platform. So when you insert yourself and your, huge following to say, this is a really important thing, but then you don't follow that up with support of the other people who are in the space, you doing it wrong. It's good intentions, but it's wrong actions. If we're not willing to hear that feedback, and then do the work it takes to correct it, I would just much rather see people step out the space altogether than to come in here and muck it up. I didn't start out blogging and speaking because I wanted to be a diversity and inclusion advocate at all. I wanted to write about just regular HR stuff. Let's talk about the FMLA. I didn't set out trying to talk about this, but here I am. And now that I'm here, I realize that my voice is adding value to the space. I'm creating space for other people as well. And if I'm going to stand here, then I've got to study and come with more than just my opinions and my observations. And I would just encourage anybody who's wanting to do this work and stand in this space to recognize that and be willing to do those same things as well.
I think that's great. It's funny that you're talking, you're telling us that if we want to be allies or accomplices, that we have to think about our impact, not our intention, or not our intention alone, right? And own our own impact and say we're sorry when we screw it up, which we will. And yet you started by saying, oh, I post those things because I'm feeling kind of petty about it. And it doesn't matter, Sarah, what your intention was. The impact was really solid.
Impact was good stuff. Yeah, the impact was great. But yeah, I can't even say that my efforts are that noble. I definitely am like, see, like here, because you guys are both really active on social media and in a lot of the other HR spaces on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that. You go to conferences, and you see the conversations that happen and how difficult, we make this seem. And we do it to people of color. We do it to women. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I remember saying that to somebody on Twitter, if Hollywood can do inclusion riders, we sure can. Like, how are we making this so difficult to figure out? It's not that difficult when you're committed to it, but when you just want to give lip service to get some residual hits on your blog by popping onto a hashtag that's really popular, then yeah, it's going to be hard because your heart's not in the right place. You don't have the right intentions and the impact isn't going to have the impact that you want it to. So I think it goes back to intentionality and being willing to be uncomfortable and educate yourself about something that is unfamiliar and really uncomfortable for you in order to, go forth and do work and make space for other people. We all have a limited shelf life in this. None of us are planning to work forever. I know I don't. So at some point, it's a succession plan, and you want to make sure that your plan includes a diverse group of voices. When you hang it up and you decide, I'm not blogging anymore, I'm not speaking anymore, are you just going to pass off your following, your contacts, your network to people who just look like you? Mm-hmm. I hope not. But, I certainly don't want that to be the case for myself. I want it to be to qualify people who have something to say that's going to add value into the space. I don't care what they look like. And I just don't know that everybody comes to it with that same intention. But, I hope so. I hope that if there really is commitment to this space and this work that we're doing right now, that people take some time and read some different things and just take some time to educate themselves about it and just be willing to be uncomfortable and shut up and let somebody else talk for once. So
absolutely.
Yes.
So another place where you recently had have a voice is you were in a Women in Leadership webcast that you were recently participated in. So tell us a little bit about that.
That was my highlight of my 2018. It's been the best experience, and just the panel of women that we put together, I think we gelled immediately. We all have connection with each other through social media and the conference space already, so it just worked out really well and just came out it was just epic. The amount of signups that we received were record breaking, and then there was just so much talk and just really good feedback about it. And so we're talking about doing it again. We're talking about possibly having a Twitter chat and some other stuff. So it's just really good. But I think it is really important for us in the HR space to be willing to have these really real and raw conversations about women in leadership, particularly right now with what's going on with Time's Up and Me Too, because people are looking at human resources as though we were complicit, in a lot of this stuff. And they're wondering what is going on, where are we at, how are we going to support these things? And I think it's valid. I think these questions are valid. And we've got to be willing to take that feedback, explain ourselves, and talk about how we're going to do better as we move forward into this new season and what that looks like. And I have had, I don't even know how many conversations with friends who are in HR and friends who are not in HR, wondering how we feel about all of this and how all of this is working, because we are smack dab in the middle. This is our stuff. pay, promotion, harassment, and discrimination, it all falls right in our lap. And so we can't pretend like we haven't been a part of this and that we don't have to be a part of the solution in as much as we were a part of the problem.
Amen. I think you're right on the money. And I hope you guys do more. That it was an awesome webinar. And like a Twitter chat would be phenomenal just to get us all in and having those conversations, because I don't think there's enough of us having the conversations. We see it, the people who are part of them right now are seeing those conversations, but we need to get more voices in there.
Yeah. I think that I think when it comes to Time's Up and Me Too and the intersection of that and HR, I think we lose sight of a couple things that are really important. And first is that the functions of human resources have always been things that business didn't really want to hear about. Like they don't. I mean, how we, paying people fair, like there are entire really, really huge, very active government agencies dedicated to defending people who were wronged, like the EEOC and the Department of Labor and the Workers' Comp Bureau and all of that stuff, because businesses didn't want to do that stuff right. And so you take that, and then that's a large part of the human resources function. And then you add to it that human resources is a woman-dominated field. So you got this area of business that contains things that businesses don't really want to do anyway. Most businesses, I'm not going to say all, but most businesses don't really want to do it anyway. And then you put women who they don't want to listen to in charge of it. What did you think was going to happen? So I think when you look at, the intersection of all of those things, it starts to become pretty obvious as to where HR was. We were being marginalized and not listened to because we were talking about stuff that nobody wanted to hear. I hope that, we start having more honest conversation about that stuff and that we really start to delve into that particular intersection, as time goes forward, and that we start to figure out how we can incorporate those things into what we're doing from an HR perspective now, as we go forward to do better. And not because we don't want to go viral, but because we want to do the right thing and we want to be better. And I'm still not convinced that most companies think that way. I think most companies are trying to avoid the liability and the public embarrassment. But I hope that more and more companies and more HR people prove me wrong.
Well, Sarah, it is now time for everybody's favorite part of the HR Social Hour, and that is the half-hour question connection.
Oh, woo-hoo.
So tell us, how has networking helped you in your career? What's been really effective for you when it comes to networking with everybody?
I'm a terrible networker. Terrible. So here's the thing. I'm super introverted. Unfamiliar environments, I get really, really shy. And so I just, I clam up, and I could very easily go. I can remember years ago going to conferences, and as soon as the last session was over, I was like, I'm out. I'm going back to my room. Like if there was a dinner event, I'm not going because I don't want to talk to strangers. And it was just bad. And so I missed out on so many opportunities to connect with people. Social media has been the thing that has changed networking for me, because building relationships with people through social media has helped me feel less anxious about attending conferences and seminars and events and talking to people. And now I just look at it as let me go make a professional friend. Let me go to this event and try to just meet one person that I can have a good in-depth conversation with and walk away with their contact information and keep in touch with them. And if I've done that, then I feel like I've done good. But I'm still figuring that out. And I just, I'm not one of those people that considers myself very good at networking at all.
And yet you're doing it well.
Thank you.
So tell us, which women do you read or follow for professional insights?
Oh my goodness. It's a long list. I don't read a lot because I feel like I read all day, between emails and documents. I know you both understand that in the HR space. So I don't feel like I read enough, but I've started to get really into podcasts. And so obviously I follow Wakeman. I was a guest on her show. That was such like a full circle moment because I've been like such a fan of hers for so many years. And so for her to actually invite me to be a guest on her podcast was like the dopest. I really love Everyday Leaders with Chris Plake. She's based out of California. She's really great. Just like super practical advice with a woman focus. I love the Productive Woman podcast with Laura McClellan. I've gotten so many tips from that podcast on like how to be more organized and how to stop procrastinating. And then I follow Side Hustle Pro with Nicaila Matthews, who just talks to women of color who have worked businesses on the side in order to launch their own empires. And those stories are just phenomenal. So yeah, podcasts are my jam. And so that's really where I go when I'm trying to get inspiration and professional insights. I've got like a 40 minutes to commute to work, so I can get one in going and coming pretty easily.
A favorite movie that features a strong female cast?
Oh my gosh, this is hard. So because I'm a person who I love TV and movies and plays. And so I'm a geek for like performance. Like I want to get just like lost, in the story and lost in the performance. But for movies this year, for me, which I know it was not intended to be a strong female cast movie, but I say Black Panther. I mean, the Dora Milaje, like what? Like, and then like the women saved the day in that movie. Like I get that it was all about King T'Challa, but he would have been nothing without his mom and his sister and those women. I mean, they were just so badass, just amazingly regal and confident and smart. And like, how could you not aspire to be like them and want to like hang out with those people? So that one this year, I think is the highest ranking ones. But then I watch a lot of TV too. So I also have to give a shout out to Big Little Lies with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman on HBO. That cast and the show they put together was just amazing. If you have not seen it, get somebody's HBO app, log in and binge it because it is so very good.
That is great. And I am with you. The female story in Black Panther was just phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah, if they don't capitalize on that and do some spinoffs, then the life is just not right. Like make this happen because that's the most interesting story of it all.
Absolutely. So how about a favorite female musician or band?
So all time, I would say Mary J. Blige. She can just do no wrong. Like somebody could be like, Mary J. Blige recorded herself reading the phone book, and I'm like, yes, I got to download it. I got to have it. Like she is just my favorite. She can do no wrong. And then in terms of current stuff, I am so completely enamored with Cardi B. Like I just love her. I think she's so this whole fight thing with her and Nicki Minaj aside, she's so unapologetically herself. And it's just an interesting phenomenon to me to watch this young woman who was a stripper and came from like really, really humble means and showing up and blowing up and being like, I'm going to make funny noises. I'm going to talk how I talk. I'm going to be who I am, whatever space I show up in, so unapologetically. I just think it's the coolest thing in the way that it's challenging the stereotypes of how people who are super famous and blowing up have to behave. So I hope her star continues to shine. And yeah, I'm down with the Barty gang. I do. I love Cardi B.
How about a favorite female protagonist in a book?
Miranda Priestley, The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh,
I know she's a movie character too, and Meryl Streep was amazing in that role. But I've read the book twice. I read the sequel to the book, which makes me mad that they haven't turned that into a movie because it was almost better than the original one. It's so if you get the chance to read Revenge, like I did it in a day and a half. Like I devoured that book. It was so good. And I mean, not just her, like all the characters, Emily and Andy and even Lily, they're in the book get so much more play than what she got in the movie. But yeah, Miranda Priestley is one of the just best characters ever. And I think as a woman in business, we can all relate to her just a little bit, like being in a tough industry, male-dominated industries, I can understand how it can make you hard and demanding. And so I say all the time, I think Miranda Priestley was just a little misunderstood. She was not as bad as people made her out to be. So yeah, she's definitely favorite protagonist in a book, hands down.
Sarah, when you are not watching Black Panther, or wait a minute, I'm going to see if I can remember these. I don't have them.
This is hard because I said a lot. Okay.
When you're not watching Black Panther, when you're not listening to Cardi B, when you are not reading The Devil Wears Prada, what do you like to do outside of work?
I have a full-time job and 5 kids, and I write and speak on the side. So I feel like I don't have a lot of downtime, and I really because even in my downtime, I feel like I'm studying something or preparing, for something. Like, let me read this article and learn more about this thing. So even my downtime becomes like a form of study, which isn't. So I just really love to binge TV. I've gotten into this habit where I don't watch TV during the week anymore. So Friday nights after I get off of work, I just binge. I binge everything, and I stay up till 2:00 in the morning like I'm a teenager and just binge all of my television shows from the week. I'm hoping that I can keep that up now that the fall season is starting, because I'm big into This Is Us and Grey's Anatomy, and I've never not watched those live, so I don't even know how I function. But I'm gonna try it and see what happens. But yeah, if I'm not working or with my family, I love a good, I call it my introvert turn up, where I can just get on my couch with a good drink, alcoholic or otherwise, curl up under my New York Giants blanket and watch some good television. That's it.
Sarah, you have successfully completed the question connection.
I did it! I read the gauntlet. Yay!
So happy to have you. So
Thank
this
you.
is your opportunity to share with the listeners how they can find you, how they can connect with you.
The best way to connect with me is The Buzz on HR. I am The Buzz on HR on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, everywhere. And my website is the same name. So Google The Buzz on HR and you will find me in all of those places. Slide in my DMs and send me a note. I respond pretty quickly. So, but yes, I look forward to anyone who wants to connect with me. And that's the best place to find me.
How about you, Ann?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Ann Tomkinson. You can find me on Twitter, Ann Tomk, ANNETOMK. Those are the 2 main places that I am. But you can find me, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can follow my blog, which is hrunderground.wordpress.com. And I also have a non-HR related personal blog, The Road Less Pedaled, also WordPress, if you are interested in learning more about me outside of HR.
You can find me on Twitter, Wendell93. I'm there, happy to connect with everyone. It's my favorite way to connect with people. It's my favorite way to network. I'll be honest with that. You can also find me on my blog, mydailyjourney.com. Daily is D as in dog, AILEY. And the 4th Sunday of each month, please join us on Twitter. Follow the hashtag HRSocialHour, and we'll chat about something fun before we kick off the work week. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. This was wonderful. Happy to chat with you and connect with you. And thank you for co-hosting again. And for the HR Social Hour Half Hour podcast, this is Wendy signing off, and I hope you all have a great day.